All right, hi there. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV, and Sal Maiorana, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, on this Friday ahead of the AFC Championship game Sunday, our Arrowhead Stadium, Bills and Chiefs once again. Sal, it's wheels up for you tomorrow.
Yep.
And back to a very familiar destination. The latest, however, is we have an update on the injuries. What we know now is that safety Taylor Rapp is going to be out for this game. Sean McDermott declared that. And Christian Benford still in concussion protocol, so that's a question mark. Looks as if Milano and Taron Johnson, they were full in practice today, so that's a very good sign. But injuries at this point, to update where we were from Wednesday here, stand to have an impact with Rapp out in this game.
Yeah, and we talked last week about how it was so uncommon that they were so healthy for that game. Well, the first two playoff games, really, it's incredible that they'd be at this point and be as healthy as they are. And now we've got the Taylor Rapp injury, which you knew last week when he got carted off the field. That was not a good sign. You kind of had a sense that it might be a stretch for this week, and sure enough, he didn't practice at all. And Sean this morning said he can't play, so it's going to be Cole Bishop, the rookie, second-round pick, who's going to get thrust in there. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the other news today was Christian Benford. It was good yesterday to see him on the field. He was practicing the red non-contact jersey, which is good. But just the fact that he's on the field in a concussion protocol was a good sign, because that means I think that would be like the fourth stage. If you're actually on the field, you got to pass 5. So that was good news. But then today, this little curveball of him being excused for a personal matter. And, Sean didn't get specific on that, whether it was tied to concussion, doctor's appointment, or something going on with his family. We're kind of left guessing here, but he did say later that he expects him back with the team, certainly by tomorrow. So my sense there, Adam, is that he's going to be able to play. We talked during the week about Ray Davis took it looked like a much more severe hit to the head, and he got back to play last week. So I think Benford will be good. And like you said, Milano, good to go yesterday. So yeah, all systems go there. That's important for them.
That's certainly important for them. Benford, it'll be interesting to see with Cole Bishop. But if Benford isn't able to go, that's a massive
that's
impact.
Tough. Yeah, they would have, now you're putting Elam on the field, and it hasn't been a good situation for the Bills there. And you've got Cole Bishop back there as a rookie. So to be down half of your starting secondary would be pretty problematic, especially against the quarterback and the tight end that they're facing on Sunday. So I think, like I said, Benford being able to play will be very, very important for them.
Yeah, absolutely critical. All right, quick word from the sponsor here, and then we'll get into some other aspects of this matchup. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. The largest selection of odds on everything: football, NBA, NHL, college basketball, UFC as well. Head to Bet Online today and get in on the action. All right, Bills Chiefs Sunday. And I guess, so much has been made of, the difference with this Kansas City team this year and winning the close games that they have. And in part, they've sort of done that in some ways by design. Not that they wouldn't have enjoyed more comfortable margins, but they kind of know when to put their foot on the gas. Yeah. But I guess my question and launching point for this part of the discussion is, their run game has not been consistent this year. And, like the receivers, do you see them getting the receivers more involved in this game this week? I think Worthy was the only one who had a catch among the wide receiver room, against the Texans. We know what Kelsey did, but I feel as if, this is a more advantageous matchup for this Buffalo defense, certainly than the Baltimore Ravens game was.
Well, yeah. If we're going to talk about the Bills defense first here, Baltimore was the worst matchup they could have imagined, right? I think we all knew that was going to be a very tough game for the Bills, and it was impressive that they survived against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, once again living on turnovers, which you can't always do, and now they're going to play a team that never turns it over. So, but I also wrote this week, Adam, that, you look at that defensive performance last week, it was not great by any stretch. The turnovers were great, but really nothing else was. They never forced the Ravens to punt. They gave up 416 yards, 8 of 11 on the possession downs. That was a game that very easily could have gone the other way if Baltimore didn't get sloppy with the ball. So you talk about the matchup with the Chiefs this week. I would look at the Chiefs game against the Texans and say that Houston defense, very good pass rush, the outstanding edge rushers that gave Mahomes a little bit of trouble. And then they're pretty good in the secondary. They've got 2 cornerbacks. The Bills have a great one in Benford. They have 2 great ones with Stingley, and the other guy's name is escaping me right now, but 2 really good cornerbacks. So it was tougher for the Chiefs to get their wide receivers involved in that game. That's why Kelsey went off. Houston's not great at the linebacker position or the safety position because of injuries. That's how Kelsey was able to get open and do so much damage. So with this week's game, I'm expecting that you're going to see a lot more of Hollywood Brown, of DeAndre Hopkins. Worthy had a role last week. He had a decent game for them. I think they're going to be able to do more against the Bills defense on the outside than Houston was able to do. So again, that's why we say Benford playing is really a must. They can't go into this game with Kyrie Elam trying to cover whether it's Worthy, Brown, or DeAndre Hopkins. That would be a bad problem for the Bills.
Yeah, and as far as the run defense is concerned, I mean, as you alluded to, but it's worth pointing this out again, whole different matchup. I mean, this Kansas City run game, the offensive line has been decent. They've made some adjustments there and gotten better, but this is a far cry from what they were dealing with that Baltimore offensive line and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt has actually kind of taken over as the number 1 guy. Pacheco is technically their starter, but ever since he came back he broke his leg and he missed about 8 or 10 weeks, I think, and he really hasn't come back and been the same player that he was before he got hurt. He is an aggressive, strong, hard to bring down runner, and you really haven't seen that. And I think Andy Reid is realizing that too, that he's not been the same guy. They've mixed Hunt in a lot more. Hunt is also a decent guy in the passing game. He can go out and catch a pass. So I think you're going to see them use those 2 guys probably pretty equally, but the Bills can't focus on one, and they won't run the ball as well, not nearly as well as the Ravens can. This is going to be a game that will come down to, I think, Mahomes throwing the ball to those outside guys, and then obviously Kelsey just doing what he does. That's got to be, to me, the crux of the Bills' focus going into the game.
In like a single game championship situation like this, right? You can talk about regular season, what we've seen in the one postseason game from them, which kind of illustrates this point, the Texans game, right? I mean, Kelsey's 7 catches, 117 yards and a touchdown, has 5, I believe it is, playoff touchdowns against the Bills. In these moments between the head coach, the quarterback, and this tight end, and I'm talking about from an offensive standpoint here, their ability to, when it matters most, either scheme something up or ad-lib something in critical situations. I mean, I don't think that, you can't exaggerate that point enough, what the Bills are up against in that this week.
I mean, the Chiefs, there's a reason why they're playing in 7 straight AFC championship games, right? They've got tremendous, tremendous ability to individually in a game come up with plans that are exactly what they need to do no matter who they're playing, right? They have an innate ability to really drill down and figure out what they need to do to win games. It isn't all about their overwhelming talent. And, any of that, they do have some luck. Clearly, they've had a lot of luck along the way. Penalties have gone their way. We know all this. But when you get right down to it, Steve Spagnuolo, as good a game planner of a defensive coordinator as there is in the NFL. And then there's Andy Reid, who he won his 300th game last week. The guy knows what he's doing, and he will be able to take individual matchups and craft that plan to exactly what he perceives will be the Bills' weaknesses. So it's a humongous test, not only for the players on the Bills team, but their coaching staff, right? Their coaching staff has to match what Spagnuolo and Reid are going to throw their way. And that really is the game inside the game. You can say that about any game in the NFL. These guys are all great coaches, but these 2 in particular have quite a resume that the Bills have to deal with.
Well, let's talk about Spagnuolo and that defense, and he loves to blitz. We know that. We saw 8 sacks against the Houston Texans last week. I would put the Bills' offensive line in a different category than Houston's,
Oh yeah,
certainly, in
not even
terms of,
close.
it's not even close. But still, the Bills have been able to strike that balance. They've certainly in the postseason been able to run the football very well. I think you and I both agree. If Spagnuolo wants to blitz, I mean, they're going to need to go to Josh's arm here
Yeah.
and make him pay for that. And, what do they have? We know what they have, the versatility in that passing game, right? But specifically, as it applies here in this matchup with that Kansas City secondary, I mean, they're going to need to rely on the passing game, I think it's fair to say, more in this matchup with Kansas City.
I mean, look, we know they're going to try to run the ball. The Bills have become a running team. They want to do that, and they're going to try like hell. They've got an offensive line that really excels in the ground game. Spencer Brown, he's played so well in these 2 playoff games. It's crazy, off the charts how good he's been. And the other guys have been pretty rock solid. They're averaging 178 yards in the 2 playoff games against the number 1 and number 3 run defense in the NFL. It's pretty impressive. But as we said, this passing game, they're going to have to be much more diverse, I think, than they were last week against Baltimore. And I think one of the keys to this game, Adam, the Chiefs have gotten back Jalen Watson, the other cornerback on the outside. They've had to use Trent McDuffie a lot on the outside this year, and he is more suited. Well, he's great regardless of where he is, but he made his hay as a slot corner. And now that they've got Watson back, he didn't start last week's game. It was his first game back in like 10 weeks. But I'm imagining that he's going to start this week. And they're probably going to be able to move McDuffie to the slot. He's probably going to play a lot more slot snaps than he has, since Watson's been down. And you know what that means. Yep. That means Khalil Shakir is going to be his guy. And we can all agree Khalil Shakir has been the only wide receiver on this team who has truly been a consistent threat, a guy who makes plays all the time. And if he's seeing a full dose of Trent McDuffie, whether it's man or zone, Josh Allen, as good as Shakir is, he's going to have to look at other places to move the ball in the air. So that's going to be a huge challenge for the Bills. Yeah. They're going to have to find a way to get Khalil Shakir away from McDuffie if that ends up being what the Chiefs do. And then the other worry, too, of McDuffie, he's so good. Spagnuolo will send blitzes from every conceivable angle, and he'll use everybody on that back 7. Any one of those guys could be coming. McDuffie is probably one of the best in the league as a defensive back at blitzing. So he is a key player for Kansas City. And like I said, the return of Jalen Watson really opens up their defense to a whole lot of other possibilities here.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that matchup, McDuffie and Shakir may be as central as any in this matchup as it plays out. I mean, look at last week with the Texans, Nico Collins, 1 catch on 3 targets, right? You know who was responsible for that by and large. So that's the caliber of player you're
he'll move outside because Collins is mostly an outside receiver. So they will move McDuffie, to the outside. He played a lot of that during the season. But I just think that that they're going to look to take away Buffalo's best player, and that's Khalil Shakir, and he operates mostly in the slot. So I think you're going to see a lot of McDuffie in there.
All right, so that takes care of a lot of the X's and O's. And I would just say this as we really now look toward and count down toward this game. We've both, covered this team both during the regular season and the success they've had against the Chiefs and the 0-3 run in the postseason. We've been there. We've been in those post-game press conferences, in those locker rooms. I don't know. I'll just throw this out there. I feel like this team has evolved to a different and better place this year. I mean, I think my expectation level is a little bit higher. I feel like they're more prepared we know they're prepared for the environment, but from an execution standpoint and what they've shown this year and what this quarterback has evolved to and the head coach and all of that, how it all fits together as coordinators. I mean, I feel they stand as good a chance as anyone does of going in there with all this history in the matchup between the two of them and what's at stake for the Chiefs at home, of the success they've had. They're undefeated at home as well, obviously, in their run to a historic Super Bowl three-peat. I mean, there's so much history on the line that goes into it from so many aspects. I feel like the Bills are as well equipped as anyone to go in there and win this game.
Oh, I totally agree. Look, the Chiefs lost one game where they were trying this year. It was to the Buffalo Bills. Now, granted, yeah, it was in Highmark Stadium, but that speaks to what the Bills have been able to accomplish this year, to give them their only real loss of the season. Bills have gone into that place, four times or three times at least, right? Three times in a row, because they beat them here this year. So I think it was the previous three times in the regular season, and they've beaten them there. We know they've lost in the postseason in that building, but I just I'm with you on this. The vibe on this team feels a little bit different this year. It has, going back to really OTAs, right? OTAs and training camp. You just got the sense that this group was maybe a little bit different. And we've talked ad nauseum about Stephon Diggs. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. They've just evolved all season long. They're a tight-knit group. They brought in a few players that have really helped to be glue guys in that locker room. You know, we kind of laugh and roll our eyes sometimes when they say they love each other and all this other stuff. But this group kind of does. This group does, from what we're told, and we're not out there partying with them and all that, but we've been told, and I believe them, that they do a lot of things together away from the facility. It's not like 53 guys going in 53 directions. And I guess that stuff does matter. It does matter. Maybe not so much when you're in the grit of the game, but as you're getting ready for it and you've got a common goal, I think that stuff does matter. And this team feels like it's very together, very connected. And I think that will say something on Sunday afternoon as to what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah, I think it translates into the grit of the game in the form of, like, this team, when I say new level, and we've talked about this earlier this week, I feel like they're game planning, right, with the backdrop of what you just described, and they're able to execute it in a much more precise, consistent, and higher level, really on both sides of the ball. What they did enough of anyway in the first half against the Ravens to capitalize on the turnovers and essentially win that game in the first half. Right? What they've done offensively in terms of ball control and kind of taking a page, as Josh Allen would admit, out of the Chiefs' book from an offensive perspective, running the football, limiting the turnovers, having a quarterback that has the maturation and the ego to put some of that other stuff in check and to execute what they've drawn up. I've just seen all of that translate into games at a higher, more effective level this year.
Yeah, and we talk about coaching a lot, and I think this team is very well coached. I think Cromer is probably it's hard to quantify, but he's certainly got to be one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. I mean, everywhere the guy goes, offensive lines excel, and that certainly has been the case in Buffalo for the last 2 years for sure. And I think Joe Brady has been he's up for the AP Assistant Coach of the Year award. Him and I think it's 5 other guys. So that should say something too about how good he's been. And we've seen that. It isn't just, up for an award. We've seen live and in person all year long just how good he has been with his game plans and the way things have worked on offense, the way they execute things. I really like what he's done. We're down to 2 head coach openings now, Adam, after what happened today with it looks like Pete Carroll going to the Raiders. You've got the Cowboys, who I don't think are on Joe Brady's radar, and the Saints. And the Saints are definitely on his radar. So I even wrote or said something this week about one of the best things that could happen about the Bills winning this game would mean 2 more weeks of unavailability to go after Joe Brady. Because if it is the Saints, and he's worked there previously, there are ties there. If the Saints lose patience because he's not going to be available for 2 more weeks, that might mean he stays in Buffalo another year, and that would be very good for the Bills and for Josh Allen in particular. So there's one more reason to want to win this game is protect Brady and keep him here because he's been really important to them this
Josh
season.
Allen said it all when he was asked in the press conference. Yeah. It was either last week or the week before. No, Brady, he's terrible. Stay away from him. Teams should just stay away from him. That spoke volumes.
And I think that the Saints still being available is worrisome because, and especially, I mean, they may end up, if he really is the guy they're thinking about, they might end up being patient and waiting 2 weeks. If they can beat this Kansas City team and complete a a playoff run that beat Denver, Baltimore, and Kansas City. Yeah, that might. We've talked in the press room. I've talked to a few of the guys, and I don't think he's really ready to be a head coach. I mean, what do I know? But it just seems like, 1 year as the full-time coordinator in Buffalo, and you've got one of the greatest players maybe to ever play.
Right.
I'm not sure that resume is quite filled out yet. Let's maybe see what he can do down the road. I think a team would be a little bit crazy to jump on the Joe Brady bandwagon right now. And that hopefully is the case, because I think the Bills and their fans would want him back. We'll see. But I don't know. I mean, it didn't go well in Carolina for him. I don't think he's quite done enough to be a head coach yet in the NFL. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Adam, but that's my sense of it. And I'm just hoping that for the Bills' sake, that he does not get a job in this cycle and maybe puts that off for another year.
Well, for what it's worth, I've had more than a few discussions about it with people in and close to the game, and there is sort of an asterisk on that resume that says, like, you have Josh Allen, right? So, again, a quarterback that's so elite like that very much helps. But there are aspects to what he's done with this offense, certainly, with his imprint on it, that he just deserves a tremendous amount of credit for. And I think he will, if not this year, eventually be a head coach. Yeah. Speaking of which, last point I want to make here, and I tweeted this the other day when the finalists came out for those awards, I really feel like Sean McDermott should be under consideration for Coach of the Year. Don't you?
I agree. I mean, those awards always go to the coaches that turned around a lousy program, right? It's almost invariably that's where they go to. I think McDermott, what he's done this year, has been exemplary. I mean, this was a team that, and the Bills made us aware last week of all the media that said they couldn't win and didn't believe in this team. But there was a lot of that was true early in the year, or, going back before the year even started with the roster turnover. It felt like this was going to be a little bit of a reset year. I never thought that the Bills, wouldn't be in contention to win the division. I figured they would win it. But I don't think you or I could have predicted a 13-4 record. It should have been 14-3 if they hadn't mailed in the last game. I didn't think any of us had that coming. And this is part of why McDermott, I think, should have been considered for the award. Yeah, he has, just like Joe Brady, he's got Josh Allen. But really, on that offense, what else does he really have? He's got a decent running back. He's got a very good offensive line, a very, kind of a run-of-the-mill group of tight ends and receivers. And their defense is not really superstar laden, right? And he has turned this into probably the best team he's coached with the Bills. This might be their best year overall as a team when you consider all three phases. That's Coach of the Year material to me, and it's kind of ridiculous that he's not even on the list.
Yeah, and we've also seen a more evolved, kind of poised leadership from him in the midst of
and
all
game
of that
management. That's all been
question.
better this year. Yeah. So it's all right there. And like we said, it's going to be some guy who turns something around this year. I don't even know who was the finalist, but whatever.
Yeah, and of course, McDermott does have whatever questions still remain. So many of them can be answered Sunday in this game, AFC Championship, with the Bills and the Chiefs. All right, my friend, thank you so much. You'll be out there at Arrowhead for the Democrat and Chronicle, as always, and we'll have our live post-game coverage as well. Travel safe.
Not up to me. Totally out of my hands. I'm just sitting back there and coach. It's up to the guy up front there.
All right, Sal. Be good, man. We'll talk to you Sunday, and thank you for being with us here on Believe in Bills.